Hello everyone, Simon here. Welcome back to Learning Psychology with Google Gemini 3. Everything is very interesting right now. So we do want to move on to personality disorders next. Let's do that. Let's move on to personality disorders. Um, in what way are personality disorders different from someone just having an unlikable personality or someone just having an unlikable personality? Like what is like an annoying person versus a person with a disorder, right? Is something is something different going on in the brains of people with a defined personality disorder like narcissism or borderline personality disorder? In what way are personality disorders different from someone just having an unlikable personality? Is something different going on in the brains of people with a defined personality disorder, like narcissism or borderline personality disorder? Right? Is it just like what's the difference between someone just being annoying and someone having a disorder? The distinction between an unpleasant personality and a personality disorder is the difference between a car that's a bit temperamental and a car with a fundamental flaw in its steering and braking systems. Yeah, but no, it's just like it's a broken car. It's just how broken it is. You see what I mean? What's the difference? There is no difference. No, I mean there's no difference in quality. It's a different like there's not a what was I trying to say? It's the same type of thing but just more severe. While we all have personality traits, like being a bit stubborn or shy, a disorder is defined by patterns that are inflexible, pervasive, and maladaptive. Right, it's just, someone having a bad personality and someone having a really bad personality. In the three-story house, a personality disorder isn't just a temporary mood in the living room. It is the way the house was built, the very foundations and wiring. Is it? Hmm. One, the ego syntonic trap. This is the biggest difference between a mood disorder like depression and a personality disorder. Depression is ego dystonic. The person feels this isn't me, I want to feel better. Really? Oh yeah, I guess so. So in depression, they recognize that they don't want to be that. Personality disorders are ego syntonic. The person feels this is exactly who I am. The rest of the world is the problem. Or maybe they are. Maybe the rest of the world is the problem. Because the CEO prefrontal cortex is part of the disorder, it can't see the malfunction. It views its own defensive reactions as perfectly logical. But what if they're right, though? What if the world is the problem? There are a lot of problems in this world, right? Borderline personality disorder, the broken thermostat. If you look at the brain of someone with borderline personality disorder, you see a system that is physically too hot. Okay, fair enough. The hyperreactive amygdala, the alarm, is significantly smaller and much more active. It's smaller and more active. Wait a minute, it's smaller though. It reacts to a small slight, like a friend being 5 minutes late, as if it were a life-threatening abandonment. Right, so the amygdala reacts more strongly to things. The thin prefrontal cortex, the wiring between the CEO and the amygdala is weak. What the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala is weak. When the alarm goes off, the prefrontal cortex has no brakes to slow the emotional surge. The result, this causes emotional dysregulation. The person feels emotion so intensely that they describe it as having a third-degree burns over their entire emotional body. I've never ever gotten that angry in my entire life. Like the idea that you'd be angry to the point that it feels like having third-degree burns over your whole body. I've never ever been that angry in my entire life. I'm not sure I'm capable of being that angry in my entire life. But that's what it means, right? Because, I don't have a hyperreactive amygdala, so I'm not capable of feeling that level of anger. And I guess they are. Like if somebody has borderline personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder, the empty mirror. Narcissism is often misunderstood as loving oneself too much, isn't it? Biologically, it is a disorder of social processing and self-esteem regulation. Self-esteem regulation, what an interesting phrase. The insular and empathy. Studies have shown that people with narcissistic personality disorder often have less gray matter in the left anterior insula, a region involved in feeling empathy for others. Okay, alright, they just don't have enough empathy. The fragile reward system, the pleasure center, the nucleus accumbens in a narcissist doesn't get enough fuel from internal satisfaction. It requires constant external supplies, praise and status, to prevent a crash into deep shame. Oh yeah, okay. Right, so they don't have any internal validation, and they require external validation to not feel extremely bad about themselves. Wow, okay. Right, so they don't have internal validation. Huh. The defense mechanism to prevent that crash, the prefrontal cortex constructs a grandiose self to protect the fragile internal self. This isn't just being a jerk, it is a survival strategy to prevent the brain from feeling a total collapse of worth. Right? So if they stop believing how great they are, they would just completely collapse. So if they stop believing that they're amazing, and if they stop getting validation from others that they're amazing, then they don't actually have anything inside supporting themselves, and so they just go into a complete lack of self-esteem. I mean, okay, I mean, we can see like it's a specific thing that is broken. So here, the left anterior insula is busted. Here, the amygdala is busted. Antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, the cold engine. This is what people often refer to as sociopathy or psychopathy. It is the opposite of borderline personality disorder. The underreactive amygdala. In ASPD, the alarm barely rings at all, while your heart rate would spike if you were caught in a lie. Their heart rate stays steady. They lack the fear signal that prevents most people from breaking rules. The connectivity gap. There is a major disconnect between the orbital frontal cortex, which understands social rules, and the amygdala, which feels the weight of those rules. The brain understands the rule intellectually but doesn't feel it emotionally. Summary. Disorder versus unlikable. Wait, I should talk more about this one. So this, I should get personal now, because this is what I feel like. And I've known this for a number of years now. I I have an underreactive amygdala, and I know that. I don't really feel fear. I don't really feel guilt or shame. And this explains me as well, right? So this is what I am. I know that. Um, yeah. And so what happens, so I'm going to talk about me because I know this. So I don't rely on emotions to guide my decisions. I have to rely on the the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, to guide my actions because I don't have the emotional responses. And I guess that's what I have to say about it. Maybe I should ask Gemini to elaborate on these things. And maybe like I'm too close to this to give you a objective explanation of it. Anyway, let's move on for now. Feature, just unlikable versus personality disorder, flexibility. And an unlikable person can adapt behavior if it hurts someone they love. A disorder is the pattern repeats even when it ruins their life. Well, I mean that's a difference in magnitude, isn't it? Insight, I know I can be a bit of a jerk sometimes. Versus I'm fine, everyone else is out to get me incompetent. What if they do both? What if I know I'm a jerk, but you're all incompetent? A person can hold both things, can hold both beliefs at the same time. Biological root, usually social learned behavior, really. Whereas a personality disorder is deeply ingrained wiring glitches in empathy or fear circuits. Is it just learned behavior? I'm not sure that it is. Look, everybody has a different personality, right? And you don't just learn your personality. I really think this is just a matter of magnitude, right? Some people have a certain personality, but it's not to an extent that it gets them in trouble. And then other people have the same personality, but at a higher magnitude, and it does get them in trouble. I think is what's going on here. Pervasiveness might be a jerk at work, but nice at home. No, but anyone can do that. In a personality disorder, the pattern shows up in every single area of their life. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's really that much of a difference, to be honest. Like, this is just well adjusted, and this is not well adjusted. But this difference, the difference, I think, is what you can learn. I don't know. Yeah, so Phineas Gage, we can go back to this one because Phineas Gage is often called the first case of an acquired personality disorder. Before the accident, he was a shrewd, smart businessman and very energetic. After the accident, he was fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity. Yeah, so he acquired. So like his amygdala was severed from his prefrontal cortex. The connection between his amygdala and the prefrontal cortex was severed, and so he kind of just became a borderline personality disorder, but not, not naturally, because literally the circuit was cut, and so he got emotional dysregulation because of it. So he became borderline because of the injury to his brain. His friends literally said Gage was no longer Gage. This is the ultimate proof for your students that personality is not a magical soul floating in space. It is a physical output of the frontal lobe. When the hardware is damaged, whether by a rot, by genetics, or by severe childhood trauma, the self changes. Right? So like a change in personality is a change in your physical brain. A personality disorder is a case where the gauge-like changes happen during the brain's development rather than through a sudden accident. Yeah. Mm. No, I want to talk more about each of these. I want to dive deeper. I want to dive deeper into the personality disorders you listed. Mm. So let's start with borderline. So what do I want to ask actually? What do I want to ask? Can it be, are there effective treatments or cures? First of all, are there effective treatments or cures? If a person has BPD, what should they do to minimize harm? What should the people around them do? Like, okay, and like you have borderline personality disorder. Okay, what are you gonna do about it? What should you do about it? Borderline personality disorder is often described as a disorder of emotional regulation because the brain's alarm system, the amygdala, is hypersensitive and the brakes, the prefrontal cortex, are underactive. The person experiences emotions as physical pain. Crazy. While cure is a strong word, BPD has one of the highest rates of remission among all personality disorders. Wow. It is treatable. With the right treatment, the brain can actually learn to regulate itself. Wow. That's more optimistic than I imagined. You can do that? The gold standard treatment, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, was created specifically for borderline personality disorder. It focuses on software updates to compensate for hardware glitches. And it works? The mechanism, DBT focuses on mindfulness and distress tolerance. It teaches the prefrontal cortex to recognize when the alarm, the amygdala, is firing and to manually intervene before an impulsive action occurs. Effect on the brain. Successful dialectical behavior therapy has been shown to increase the gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex and decrease the hyperactivity of the amygdala. It literally strengthens the brakes of the brain. You can train your brain to learn to do that? Impressive. Mindfulness. Just meditate more. Just meditate more, and it changes your brain. I mean, not just meditate more. Obviously, like see a professional, do it properly, but more or less just meditate more. For the person with BPD, minimizing harm, if you have borderline personality disorder, your brain is prone to emotional hijacking. To minimize harm to yourself and your relationships, the goal is to widen the gap between feeling an emotion and acting on it. Ah. Identify triggers. So this is just like managing your own emotions. Identify triggers. Learn to recognize the physical signs of an emotional surge, racing heart, heat in the face, before your thoughts catch up. The TIPP skill, a physical reset. When in a crisis, use biology to force a basement reset. Temperature. Splash ice cold water on your face, or just take a cold shower. This triggers the mammalian dive reflex, which physically slows your heart rate and calms the nervous system. Oh, really? Intense exercise. Burn off the fight or flight adrenaline. So, like, instead of punching the guy, punch a punching bag, right? Punch something else, and just burn off the adrenaline on something non-destructive. Stop the splitting. Borderline personality disorder often causes black and white thinking. This person is an angel versus this person is a monster. Practice acknowledging that two things can be true at once. I am angry at them and they still love me. Ah. But like there are physical things you can do to calm your body down. Like when your adrenaline builds up, there are things you can do to burn it off. For the people around them, the support strategy. Being close to someone with borderline personality disorder can feel like walking on eggshells. The goal for supporters is to provide stability without becoming a spark. Set hard boundaries. The borderline personality disorder brain often pushes boundaries to test if someone will leave. Clear, consistent boundaries actually make the person feel safer. I love you, but I will hang up the phone if you start yelling at me. Hmm. Clear boundaries. I mean, that's just a good idea in all circumstances, really. Validate the emotion, not the action. You don't have to agree with their logic to acknowledge their pain. Instead of you are overreacting, I was only 5 minutes late, try. I can see that you're feeling really anxious and hurt right now because I was late. I understand that feels scary. Don't jade. Avoid justifying, arguing, defending, or explaining when they're in a hot state. When the amygdala is in charge, the prefrontal cortex is offline. Logic will only escalate the fight. Wait until they are calm to discuss the issue. Right. I mean, that's probably useful not just for dealing with borderline personality disorder, but for any sort of argument. Okay. Alright, let's move on to narcissism. What about narcissism? Narciss how many S's are there? Okay, narcissism. Okay. What about narcissism? What are treatments? What are the potential treatments? What should the person with narcissism do? And what should people around them do? Treating narcissistic personality disorder is uniquely challenging because the disorder itself is a defense mechanism designed to prevent the person from ever admitting they have a problem. In the three-story house, the narcissism is a massive high-security wall built around a very fragile, empty basement. Unlike the borderline personality disorder brain, which is too hot with emotion, the narcissistic personality disorder brain is often too cold in the areas responsible for social connection. Yeah, so the grandiose personality is like a decoy, a distraction to distract you from what they think is their really like what they think is their own failure, right? They're trying to distract you from what they feel like is their own failure. So it's a defense mechanism. The narcissistic brain, the empathy gap. When we look at the brains of people with narcissistic personality disorder, we see specific physiological differences in the social brain. The insular glitch, the anterior insula, is responsible for emotional empathy, the ability to actually feel what someone else is feeling. In narcissistic personality disorder, there is often less gray matter here. They might understand you are sad, cognitive empathy, but they don't feel the discomfort of your sadness. Okay, but what's the difference? But like, I don't know. But what, and what's wrong with that? Like, what problems does that lead to? The self loop, there is hyperconnectivity in the medial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that thinks about the self. Their brain is essentially stuck in a loop of self-reference, making it physically difficult to shift focus to others' needs. Oh, right. So the lack of empathy means that they don't think about other people, and so then as a result, they only think about themselves. Because, in a normal brain, you think about yourself and you think about other people, right? But because the part that thinks about other people is broken, they only think about themselves, right? The reward system, the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center, is addicted to narcissistic supply. praise, power, or attention. Without it, the brain enters a state of narcissistic injury, which feels like a life-threatening drop in status. I mean, I can't imagine what that's like. Like, I can understand the logic of it, but I can't imagine what it feels like, right? Hmm. All right, so potential treatments, piercing the armor. Because people with narcissistic personality disorder rarely seek help unless they hit rock bottom, like losing a job or spouse. Treatment is often slow. So unless they actually hit a life-threatening drop in status, they don't seek treatment, right? Transference-focused psychotherapy. The therapist allows the patient to project their feelings onto them. By observing how the patient interacts with the therapist in real time, they can point out the grandiosity and devaluation patterns as they happen. Allows the patient to project their feelings onto them. But that's a bit of a trick, isn't it? So, like, you encourage the other person to talk to you as though they're talking to themselves, right? And because they're talking to you, they don't get defensive. Like, they can attack you, but what they're not really attacking you because they've kind of transferred their own self onto you. They're actually attacking themselves, but they're not attacking themselves, and so they don't get defensive because they're attacking you. But it's not really you. It's just they're projecting themselves onto you. That's a bit of a trick, though, isn't it? It is a bit of a trick. But I guess it's how you. I mean, it's a lie. It's basically a lie, but it's a lie that allows them to not get automatically defensive, right? Well, I guess you don't have to have them like project onto you. You can like, have like a a like a doll. Like imagine this doll like a puppet. Oh, maybe that would work. Like you give them a puppet, like a hand puppet, and you have them speak as the puppet, and so they're not speaking as themselves; they're speaking as the puppet, and so they don't get personally attacked. Anyway, so you're transferring them onto a different thing, so they don't feel personally attacked when they have to, you know, address these problems. Like a kind of a sock puppet. Mentalization-based therapy, MBT. This focuses on helping the patient think about thinking. It encourages them to realize that other people have independent minds with their own valid feelings. I don't know, yeah, okay, but it doesn't change how they feel about themselves, right? Medication, there are no anti-narcissism pill. However, doctors often treat the comorbidities, the depression or anxiety that occurs when the grandiose self fails to get the attention it craves. Hmm. But I mean, both are false, right? Because the devaluation part is also false. Like they have, really, they have low self-esteem. But that's a mistake because they're not that worthless. And then to compensate for for their own low self-esteem, they create the grandiose illusion or the grandiose what should we call it? The mask, the costume, like the grandiose projection. But that's also fake. So both are fake, or like both are not real. Hmm. Okay, so for the person with narcissistic personality disorder, minimizing harm. If a person with narcissistic personality disorder wants to change, which usually requires a high level of prefrontal cortex intervention, the goal is to move from external validation to internal worth. Yeah, they basically have to work on their own self-esteem. Practice vulnerability exercises, admitting a small mistake or a minor insecurity to a trusted person. This desensitizes the brain to the fear of not being perfect. Right, so you practice vulnerability, and I guess if you do it repeatedly enough, eventually you learn that, hey, people aren't as hard on you as you are on yourself. Like people aren't nearly as judgmental as you are of yourself. And so like you get used to the idea that, you know what, people are gonna be kind to you, even if you're not perfect, right? So you have to kind of learn that, and you have to practice doing that if you have narcissism. Delay the devaluation response. When someone criticizes you, your brain treats it as an attack. Use the prefrontal cortex to pause. This person isn't saying I'm worthless, they're saying they are hurt by my action. Right? So like a cognitive reasoning to avoid the attack on your self-esteem. Build authentic empathy. Force the brain to imagine the internal state of others. If I were in their shoes, what would my day have been like? This strengthens the underused insular circuits. So this is just good advice for everybody. Like put yourself in other people's shoes. But yeah, so practice that. Hmm. I mean, you wanna improve their self-esteem, but you want to like actually target their internal self. Like you don't want to praise their external self. Like, you don't want to praise the persona that they use as a distraction. You don't want to praise that one. You want to praise who they actually are and not their fake persona, right? For the people around them, the gray rock and boundaries. Living with a narcissist is exhausting because you are often treated as a character in their play rather than a real person. The gray rock method. If you cannot leave the situation, being as boring as a gray rock, or become as boring as a gray rock. Narcissists thrive on emotional reactions, praise or anger. By giving neutral, boring responses, you stop providing the fuel their reward system craves, and they often lose interest in manipulating you. Yeah, okay, so if you don't feed their narcissism, then they'll eventually stop asking you to feed their narcissism. Enforce consequences, not arguments. Don't try to win a logic battle with the narcissistic personality disorder brain. Their prefrontal cortex is too good at twisting facts. Instead use if-then boundaries. If you belittle me in front of our friends, then I will leave the dinner immediately. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna leave the dinner immediately, just leave them permanently. Just just leave them permanently. Like, why are you gonna play those games with them, right? Release the fixer mentality. You cannot love the empathy gap away. It is a structural brain issue. You must protect your own mental health rather than trying to provide enough supply to fill their bottomless bucket. Yeah, so that's important. Like you can't. There's no amount of praise you can give them that will be enough. Um. mm, Interesting. It's hard though. It's hard for people to do these things because you have your own emotional reactions, right? Like when someone says something to you, you have to like you can't avoid responding emotionally. And so like this whole gray rock thing, it's easy to say, oh, just don't react. Just don't react emotionally. But how do you do that? How do you not react emotionally, right? It's very difficult to do. Like you can tell someone just do this and it'll work, but it doesn't mean they can do it, right? Mm. All right, let's go for psychopathy. Tell me about psychopathy. Mm, what is going on in the psychopath's brain? going on in the psychopath's brain that is different, that makes them different? What should a psychopath do if they want to minimize harm? What should the people around them do? In the clinical world, this is known as antisocial personality disorder, with psychopathy representing the most severe, cold, and calculated end of the spectrum. If borderline personality disorder is an overheated brain and narcissism is a self-obsessed brain, psychopathy is a cold brain. In the three-story house, the basement, the alarm is practically silent. And the penthouse, the CEO, is used strictly for predatory efficiency rather than social connection. Right? So there's no social thinking, and the emotions are practically silent. So it's just logic, just thinking, nothing else. No emotions, only logic. The psychopathic brain, the fearless circuit. The most striking thing about a psychopath's brain is what doesn't happen. It's not what's there, it's what's not there. The silent amygdala. In a healthy person, the amygdala fires when they see someone in pain or think about getting caught in a lie. In a psychopath, the amygdala is often smaller and shows significantly less activity. They don't feel fear or guilt, they only understand them as concepts. Right? The high conflict logic. There is a disconnect between the amygdala and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Ventromedial prefrontal, it's this one. This is the conscience wire. Because this connection is weak, the brain can't attach an emotional cost to a bad action. They can logically know an action is wrong, but they don't feel the gut punch of guilt that stops the rest of us, right? So they know cognitively, rationally, they know right and wrong, but they don't feel right and they don't feel wrong. The gut punch. The overactive reward center, while they don't feel fear, they feel dopamine very strongly. The striatum, the reward center, is often hyperreactive. This creates a predatory drive. The urge to get what they want, money, sex, power, outweighs any social or moral concerns. Or I mean, depends on what they want, right? Is there a treatment? Psychopathy is notoriously difficult to treat because the person doesn't suffer from their symptoms, other people do. Yeah, that's the worst part, or the best part, depending on your perspective. The psychopath is not the one who suffers, it's everyone else that suffers. The failed empathy approach. Standard empathy training often backfires. Yep. Because psychopaths have high cognitive empathy, they understand what you feel, but zero affective empathy, feeling what you feel. Training can actually make them better manipulators. So they better understand, but they're still not affected by it. The self-interest approach, the most effective treatments, like decompression therapy, focus on the reward system, because that's the part that works, right? Instead of trying to make them care about others, the therapist convinced the CEO that pro-social behavior is in their own best interest. For example, if you don't hurt people, you stay out of prison and keep your money. Right? Right. So you don't tell them, hey, hurting people is bad, because they don't care. They don't care that that is bad. You say, like, if you hurt people, you go to prison, and you don't want to be in prison, so don't hurt people. And that works with a psychopath, right? For the person with psychopathic traits, minimizing harm. If a person recognizes these traits in themselves and wants to live a functional life, they must rely entirely on their logic to override their impulse, right? Rule-based living. Since they lack a moral compass, they must adopt a rigid set of intellectual rules. I will not steal because the long-term risk of prison outweighs the short-term gain, right? So they have to like keep those rules in mind. Or keep that logic in mind. Pro-social channels. Many people with these traits find success in high-stake fields that require cold decision-making, such as surgery, special forces, or high-level crisis management. They can use their fearlessness for a purpose that helps society. Right, so they use their unusual psychology to do things that are difficult for other people. Cognitive checks. They must manually ask, how will this action affect my long-term goals? To prevent the hyper-reactive reward system from making an impulsive, destructive choice. Yep. And then for the people around them, the no contract rule. If you're dealing with a true psychopath, not just a jerk, but an actual psychopath, the standard rules of human relationship do not apply because the empathy hardware is missing. Believe the actions, not the words. Psychopaths are often incredibly charming, the mask of sanity. Do not listen to their promises. Look only at their track record. Right? Don't try to fix them. You cannot love someone into growing an amygdala or connecting their ventromedial prefrontal cortex. It's a structural neurological reality. Yeah, so they don't even feel the love. You can love them, but they don't feel it. So it doesn't actually do anything. The gray rock or exit. If you cannot leave, use the gray rock method, becoming as uninteresting as possible. If you can leave, no contact is the only safe way to prevent manipulation. If they care about manipulating you, that is. Hmm. Alright, so I have said I am probably a psychopath, right? Based on everything I know about myself and how I feel, this describes how I feel. I don't really get scared, and I don't really get angry. So amygdala is anger and fear, and I almost never feel anger or fear. Like basically a handful of times in my entire life. So basically no amygdala. High conflict logic conscience, like the gut punch of guilt. I have never felt a gut punch of, well, I wouldn't say a gut punch, more like a soft touch in the gut. A few times, a few times in my entire life, I felt a soft touch in the gut when I know I've done something wrong. But I wouldn't call it a punch, right? I would not call it a punch. I would say that, a little bit uncomfortable, but doesn't really affect me that much. So like the so-called conscience, which is where you automatically react emotionally negatively to the knowledge that you've done something wrong, like guilt. I don't feel it, right? I know right and wrong. I know what I've done, but I don't feel it. The overactive reward center. This one I'm not so sure about. But maybe it's just because it's always been overactive, so I don't have a frame of reference. A predatory drive, the urge to get what they want. Money, sex, power. I don't really want money or sex or power. I mean, if you give me money, I'll take the money. If you give me sex, I'll take the sex. If you give me power, I don't really want the power because power usually comes with responsibility, and I don't want to care about responsibility. So what I want really is just a peaceful life, and like you don't really predate your way to a peaceful life. You kind of just chill and relax. So I think just like security, peace and security is probably the most important things, and that's what I want. So, you know, being mean to other people does not lead to peace and security. So for me, that's how I stay harmless, right? Is just focus on the long-term goal of peace and security. And don't do anything crazy that would jeopardize your own security or your own peace. Is there a treatment? Yeah, so treatment basically, I think, is just the logic. Just the logic. The logic of, first of all, one, what do you really want? And two, how do you get what you really want with minimal cost? And by minimal cost, we're saying things like going to prison is a cost, losing your money is a cost, even losing friends is a cost. Like anything that doesn't benefit you is a cost. And so how do you get what you want without having to do any of these things that would cause you harm later on? So again, it's like it's a very self-interest approach. It's a very like logical, cold logic, and I guess it's like a transactional approach, right? Like if you do this, you get that. If you don't do this, you get that. And you just kind of you choose the actions that get you the most of what you want and the least of what you don't want. And for me personally, staying out of trouble is, I don't want to get in trouble because trouble is bothersome, is tiresome. And so I do whatever I stay out of trouble, right? And that's it. And that's how I minimize harm, basically. Mm, Rule-based living, yeah. So stuff like I would not steal because the long-term risk of prison outweighs the short-term gain. So yeah, so this is what I think about, and this is why I don't do bad things. Uh, I'm not too sure about this. Like, okay, there are high-stakes fields that I'm sure I would I could use my fearlessness in things like surgery and special forces and like high-level crisis management. But also these things carry risks and stress, and you have to like work hard. And I would rather not have to work hard if I don't have to. I'm also lazy. Um, but I think sometimes I think about like what are things that would be uncomfortable for other people, but which I can handle without any problems. And I would be willing to do those things, except that people often don't ask me to do those things, right? It's interesting. People don't know I'm a psychopath, and they don't suspect that I'm a psychopath, and so nobody ever comes to me expecting me to be okay with doing things that they're not, right? Like things that make them uncomfortable or things that, are emotionally difficult for them to handle. I would probably handle them without any emotional difficulty because I don't really have a lot of emotions. And so if people ask me to do those things, I would do them because it's easy for me and it's hard for them, so why not, right? But people don't know that, so they don't ask for that. And so I never actually get to use my particular fearlessness, like my particular advantage. I don't really get to make use of it because people don't realize that I have it. Hmm. So there you go. Uh, as for the people around me, okay, so the thing with psychopaths is psychopaths are famous for being harmful to the people around them. And some of them are, yes. Some psychopaths are harmful to people around them, but usually the ones who don't know what they're doing, who don't really understand themselves, and who haven't come up with like a philosophy for how to be a psychopath. So I don't think people around me need to worry about me that much. Like I have no interest in harming the people around me. In fact, I would want to help the people around me because they would help me back when I need help. So like I'm perfectly open to that sort of mutually productive, mutually beneficial relationship. The thing is, the thing that I've experienced is that what causes people harm is they try to love me, whether that's, actual romantic love or just, friendship. They try to offer me things that don't have any impact on me, right? So what do I mean? So like a simple example, you, when you receive a gift from someone, you feel happier, right? Most people do. Or most people like when someone gives you a compliment, oh, you look nice today, or your hair is nice today. You feel good, right? It makes you feel good. Whereas for me, I don't feel anything. So you give me a present, I don't feel anything. You compliment my hair, I don't feel anything. I just don't have those feelings. And so when people try to do these things that they think I would like, and then I don't like them, that's what hurts them emotionally. Is when they make an effort to try to make me happy, and I don't get happy, it hurts them because they failed to make me happy. But they don't understand that it's not because they did anything wrong. It's because I don't have the capacity to be happy. Like I don't have the capacity to feel much of anything, right? Just like if you try to make me angry, you would fail because I wouldn't get angry. But the opposite is also true. You try to make me happy, I won't feel happy. And so people get hurt. Like I mean, I don't know if you believe me when I say this. Maybe you think I'm trying to justify my bad behavior. Maybe I am. But when people get hurt around me, it's not because I hurt them. It's because they're putting in an effort into something that has zero effect. But they don't know that, right? So it's not really their fault that they don't know that. But they're putting a lot of effort into something that doesn't work, and that wasted effort is what hurts them because they've spent their time and sometimes their money, and more importantly, they invest their emotions into this thing that ultimately doesn't work out, and that hurts them when it doesn't hurt and when it doesn't work out. And for me, that's how most people get hurt around me. Again, it's not because of anything I do. And maybe from their perspective, it is something I did, but I don't know. I don't see it from my perspective. Is that they don't understand at the beginning that what they're trying to do is not what's going to work. Mm. And when I try to explain to them, they don't like the explanation either. That's what I found. When I try to explain to them that I'm a psychopath and I don't have feelings, they don't like that either. Which I don't know how I can get people to be okay with that. Okay, so that's psychopathy, and that's coming from personal experience this time. All the other, you know, all the other mental disorders, I can't say from a personal experience, but psychopathy I can talk about from personal experience because I am a psychopath. I don't really know what else to do about that. I just wish people could just, be okay with the fact that I don't have a lot of emotions. It's like I can tell that it's not a good thing when people invest their emotions in me and they get nothing back. Like I recognize that this is not good for them. But the way I look at it is like, I mean, emotionally, I'm like a robot or like a mannequin, and maybe people have to look at me like that. I'm a mannequin or I'm a robot. Like if you invest your emotions into a robot, the robot's not going to give you anything back because it's a robot, right? You see what I mean? It's not a person. It doesn't have emotions. Or like you invest your emotions into a toy, into a door, and the door doesn't say anything back to you because it's a door. You don't expect it to give you anything back, really. And I don't know. I wonder if anybody can be okay with not expecting anything back emotionally. I can give everything else, right? I can do practical things. Anyway, that's me. That's what I have to say. All right. I guess that's it for the personality disorders. What do we do next? Neurodevelopmental. No, I want to do this as well. So this stuff is going to be also interesting. So things like ADHD, autism. Let's do that. Like autism is a big one, and ADHD is a big one. Okay, let's do that next time. neurodevelopmental disorders. All right, see you next time.